and welcome to the One Idjit's Thoughts On podcast. I am your host, Paul Mackey. I'm currently in mid-process on the Season 1 finale of the Rockford Files on another document, but thought I would try to do a postmortem on the trivia game. A Boxing Day review. Most of the feedback so far has been between difficult and cruel. Well, maybe not quite to the extreme of that latter end, but close. Darcy and I go to weekly trivia, and some of what the Trivia Mafia Company's writers come up with I would call similarly difficult. So, as much as I can remove myself from the writing process, I'll try to go through and rejudge what I wrote. I'm sure if I was paid to write trivia, I'd be reviewing like this before I bothered to ask you all, but I'm not a professional trivia writer, nor a professional talking person for that matter. I'm not sure how much interest everyone will have in this, but I'm going to give it a shot. And, of course, spoiler alert, all 12 episodes of trivia will be answered in this episode. So if you haven't gone back through and listened to it all, you should probably go back and do that first. Set 1. Digestive system was kind of a gimme, but then again, a fairly straightforward description of a stomach caught us all up at trivia trying to come up with obscure bits of digestive organs, and we wound up with the wrong answer. Black and white, I think those clues both would have guided me there. Fortune, I think the lists clue would have clicked it for me. This is one of those trivia questions they, and apparently I, like to write, where there are a bunch of extra but unnecessary facts wrapped around a basic question, which was name a financial magazine famous for making lists. I didn't know any of that other stuff before I wrote that question, but the base question was pretty graspable, kind of like when you're teaching your kids to solve math word problems by first stripping away all the extraneous information. I'm not sure if I would have had enough of an idea to come at it from the mystery angle, though. When you're trying to figure out a mystery round, sometimes you can guess some of the answers based on having worked out the theme. I'm not sure if digestive and black and white would have gotten me to cookie ahead of including fortune, but all three words together would have got me to cookie. Set 2. The Newton dropping the fig thing is one of those things I noticed about the packaging at some point. I'm not sure if I can divorce myself from that knowledge enough to say I would definitely work out the answer. Take away that, and I don't know if I'd be thinking Newton, Massachusetts. That one was tougher. Palms. Maybe I would have got it. If I didn't live in a crafting household, I might not have known even what raffia is. On a good day, I might remember the coconut palms they have always had at the Como Conservatory that I visited a ton growing up because it was in my neighborhood. Or the displays of plant products that conservatories and interpretive gardens. Hey, did you know, kids, there are 45 things they make from palm trees? And I know I heard those multi-fruit bit berries called drupes within the last year. Calling the stem by its technical name Taurus was a little bit mean. I definitely didn't know it by that name. Of course, the three answers together leading to PDAs was another fat pitch I thought I hung out over the plate for you all. Set 3. The Carter fact I had heard and filed away for later, so if I was asked a question at trivia, I would have gotten it easy. And there's probably a pretty limited number of possible choices barring a trick question, so educated guessing would have gotten some players to the point. I read Undaunted Courage by Stephen Ambrose when it came out in trade paperback just before the bicentennial of the Corps of Discovery, so I would have gotten that right, I know. But some of those details are probably pretty esoteric for the average individual or someone not from the U.S., so I accept that it would be tough for a lot of people. The Ross Dress for Less felt really obvious to me, but of course there are 7 states without the store, and the whole world, aside from Guam, which is still in the U.S. after all. Carter Lewis Ross TER, I believe I would have gotten it. All respect to Sherry Stringfield, I'm not sure if I remember Dr. Lewis by name. Perhaps if I'd gone with Dr. Green, it would have been easier. And then those bonus medical shows were meant to be tricky, but not impossible. Marcus Welby, MD, was the long shot, I think. Before I looked it up, I didn't know it had new episodes through the spring of 1976. I would have guessed it was older. It does amuse me that the health products at American Aldi stores have the house brand name of Welby. Set number 4. I know who Hal Needham is, but I watched lots more Cannonball Run than Smokey and the Bandit growing up. I'm not sure if there were enough specific clues to get me to the correct answer. Maybe if I pondered really hard based on the popularity and the year. The Kristen Bell Gossip Girl connection is well known to me, mainly from my Veronica Mars fandom. Another bigger info wrapped around what show has Kristen Bell prominently featured but uncredited. I think some people missed the uncredited detail and just went with Veronica Mars, which ended and was relaunched under the same title somewhere else. And while I know all the key players mentioned, I've never seen Mimic in my life. I may have heard about it when it was released, but it's really not my kind of film. I heard the theme question on Brain of Britain just after I posted mine, but of course their list of Shakespeare words was at least 6 or 7 words longer, and it still stumped that panel if I correctly recall. So on the whole, not fair exactly, but knowing our history with Amy Bowen and Shakespeare, you can see why I included it. Set number 5. Buy Nothing Day was supposed to be another fat pitch, but I think that I might have caught a few people short nonetheless. I don't think I can separate myself from my Buffy fandom enough to objectively judge The Lie to me, but Tim Roth is an actor I've followed closely after Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, so I might have gotten it off just that. The Halo, I might have gotten off the iconography, but the other 2 clues were tough to come up with. I gather the Halo effect in psychology is well known in certain circles, but I hadn't heard of it. And holy cow, is that ever a $5 word salad of a question. I'm a big enough Depeche Mode fan that none of the songs felt like deep cuts, but I can admit that nothing is buried inside 2 of Music for the Masses along with Pimp and Agent Orange, and could be a harder pull for a lot of people. Set number 6, I confessed it at the time, the extra point was one of the more unfair ones. But I tried to make the base answers easier. I love a Chicago dog, but outside that one application, I haven't really heard of sport peppers, so maybe it was tougher. The Mark Twain story I read as a kid, and it was obviously deep enough in Americana for Prefab Sprout to have noticed it. Perhaps too deep a Twain cut for some, I guess. And I probably should have taken a different approach to get people to say Albuquerque. It was an if you know, you know category, and Melissa Bartell knew, but unfair overall, yes. Set number 7. David Chase as creator of The Sopranos was something I definitely knew, so it was an easy choice. I would have gotten that right. It surprised me about Rockford and Kolchak when I was writing the clues. I knew him from The Sopranos. Morris the Cat was hopefully as easy as I intended, but maybe it helped to have watched a lot of TV in the 70s and 80s. And like Darcy said, we had Cars on loop for a couple of years at our house, and I thought the salad dressing philanthropy was a giveaway too. Not everyone remembers Garrett Morris quite like Chevy Chase for whatever reason. The question I discarded was the final blank Frank lyrically faced In My Way. Would that have been better? Maybe not as easy as a cat, but maybe that extra point with Jane Curtin would have improved it. Oh, and I didn't know the Chevy Chase bonuses until I researched. I feel like I might have heard the Cornelius part, but I doubt I would have pulled it out. And the Schuyler sisters was possibly better suited as a fascinating fact instead of a question, though I felt like the clues that I gave were adequate for someone out there to guess the right answer. Set number 8, Happy from the MCU, played by Jon Favreau, I thought was a bit easier. As popular as they were, I'm not sure if I would have personally come up with fun. And I definitely know The Secret Policeman's Ball. And SNL fans of an age know Happy Fun Ball, which has re-aired in the Best of specials for years since 1991. I admit unfair like the King of Rock and Roll a little bit, but at least a broader fan base would have easily gotten it. Set 9, Claws, I might have gotten, and if I'd worked out the theme, I'd probably go back to it and figure it out at the end. Marx and Engels was a gimme, I thought, but then again, not everyone took a semester of political philosophy in high school like me. In terms of on the air, I was a giant Twin Peaks fan, and that was simple enough for me, having watched it at the time, on the air, as it were. I could have given a plot synopsis, but it might have been too obvious after that, aside from the choice between on or off. Her, I thought, was another easier one. I went straight to that movie for the clue, and I've never actually seen it. And while Brian Johnson might not have clued everyone in, 27 times platinum means a lot of people know Back in Black. I was surprised by Darcy not picking it up from the 5 words. I was hoping folks listening to the Mondo feed had Chuck's performance in their recent memory. And then, for the bonus, I figured I had hit Marvel, so why not DC? I'm not as versed on Batman Rogues. I'm not sure how back tier Firefly really is, but I know Poison Ivy made the big screen, and I know that Hush was part of a whole plot arc over multiple issues. So I think I might have got that point. Set 10. I've never played Payday, but I remember it existing. Would I have worked it out from the clues I gave? Maybe. But much younger Lucy got it, so maybe it was easier? I debated on the Fifth Avenue question a lot. Calling it a destination kind of makes it sound like a building. But does calling it a street give too much away? I went with the former, obviously. I'm not sure if I would have worked it out as the trivia player. I might have gotten looking for Mr. Goodbar if I was presented a more complete cast list. I don't know how I missed out Richard Gere in the clue. After I had it all recorded, I found myself asking, wait, wasn't Richard Gere in that movie? The extra point was easier, at least. And set 11, I came up with the last set early on, back when I considered making every set a holiday-based question. Darcy caught on as intended when I mentioned the critic's percolator quip, but I'm not sure if her added Muppet clue made it clearer for lots of people or actually muddied it, as the Muppets did it as an internet video, not on The Muppet Show. I don't know if I gave enough hints to really get to popcorn. With the Gravity Falls steeping in Disney television animation that I got this summer, I was being fed Star versus the Force of Evil suggestions by all the cookie algorithms ever computed. It seemed easy from that perspective, but I guess it was a perspective pretty unique to me. And Merrick Garland, I'm pretty sure I would have gotten. I could have added the Supreme Court thing prominently in the question, but I was trying to stay more factual and less political. And hopefully the category was gimme, though admittedly rooted in Western pagan/Christian perspectives. The bonuses at the end, I think I would have gotten the Intellivision easy off the Snafu and Frog Bog, though I don't actually honestly know those other two games. The Blackjack and Freshen Up gave away the gums. If it was just Eclipse and Orbit, I'm not as positive. They're kind of generic gum names. The Sonic games I probably wouldn't have gotten, but the and the Secret Rings would have been the most accessible clue of those four. I definitely wouldn't have run the board on all that. I think my scores add up to around 49 of 57, not counting the maybes. Writing the series in general was a lot of fun, though, and I enjoyed presenting it. The added guests were a bit of an afterthought. I thought it went really well, but I would like to have planned it better for timing. The other unexpected snag was the video podcast component. I debated a still screen with audio or just a couple of questions on the screen. I ended up going a little bit heavier on the graphics on the first couple and then really getting into it, but it was a lot of extra work. I hope if you get the chance and haven't looked yet, you'll check out at least a little bit of the video from the 12 Days of Trivia at youtube.com/@PaulIdjit. The 12 days are the most recent videos at the moment, but I'm also intending to put them into their own playlist as well. So, I'm pretty sure trivia will return in August. After the last 2 years featuring mostly TV reviews with a light sprinkle of trivia, I'm thinking closer to a 50-50 split next Dog Days. And unlike the last few years, I don't have a show lined up in mind. Press Gang episodes do run 25 minutes, more like Gravity Falls, Men with Brooms, and That 80s Show, which started out both the podcast itself and my first DDOP. But the 43-episode count I had intended to alternate with Seeing Things, having an equal count. I do have one series of 16 TV episodes that are an hour long that could work if I can do that much, plus trivia. Of course, the other thing I learned once more is pre-records can be your friend, albeit with slight loss of interaction day-to-day with other Dog Days players. I'll have to figure this all out, ideally sooner than the last month leading up to the challenge. Heck, at this point, I've made that promise to myself at least once before, so time will tell. Happy hunting! You've been listening to the One Idjit's Thoughts On podcast, produced by Paul Mackey in association with Nimlas Studios. Any short clips of audio from shows is included under fair use for commentary purposes, and copyright for that content remains with its original copyright holders. The theme song is Too Good by Jack Mangan and is used by his generous permission. One Idjit's Thoughts is produced under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. You can find more episodes of this podcast and many other fine podcasts at nimlas.org. You can contact me by emailing idjitcastpodcast@gmail.com or commenting on episodes at nimlas.org. I might be slightly overscoring myself, I don't know. how can I know what I wouldn't know because I already know what I know, you know?